It doesn't matter what level of football you're playing, it helps to know the rules, and the Seahawks benefited from that today, stealing one in the Steel City. We're going to be breaking down a 31-17 victory over the Steelers in Pittsburgh coming up next year on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on our weekly post-game show by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week, whether you're tuning in from nearby Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, or down the street in Renton, Washington. All right, Rob, what a contest we got to watch today in Pittsburgh. A tale of two halves, a lot of dysfunction from both teams. I called it a modern version of NFL Films Football Follies. That is what took place today here in Pittsburgh, but the Seahawks find a way to get the last laughs in a 31-17 victory over the Steelers. And just to kind of paint the picture here, if you're somebody that didn't get to see the entire game, the Seahawks were down 14-7 at half, even though they had outgained Pittsburgh by more than 100 yards, and they had held the Steelers to under 70 total yards in that half. They were losing because they had a couple of interceptions that led to points, including a DK Metcalf touchdown against his former team to end the first half and take the lead. There was a missed field goal in there. It, again, was truly a game of dysfunctions, and yet the Seahawks, in a game they had dominated, they were down 7 at half. But as Sam Darnold said afterwards, it felt like there was a lot of positive energy in the locker room, and there should have been. They were the better team in the first half, except for those mistakes that they made. And really the difference in this road game boiled down to what we didn't see last week. It was all about finishing plays and finishing the game. And the Seahawks did that in all three phases, both with execution and, well, a little bit of luck as well.
Well, there was a little bit of luck. Certainly, the rookie Caleb Johnson, wound up having the let the ball go through his hands for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then when that happened, then for those of you who didn't watch, George Halani was Johnny on the spot, was able to jump on the ball in the end zone and gave Seahawks an easy touchdown. However, I do think that it's important to note, Corbin, that what you said before, but this was a game where the Seahawks finished, and not only did they finish, which of course is a very different outcome than what we saw against the San Francisco 49ers in week one. I loved the way they started as well. You, of course, were at the game, so you didn't watch the telecast on Fox. And then one of the things that they noted was that the Seahawks for 22 consecutive games had not started a game scoring a touchdown on their opening drive. Well, they exercised that demon. And then, of course, they came in the first drive of the second half and scored a touchdown as well. I loved the way they started as well as the way they finished in this particular football game. And I thought, as you said, that the Seahawks were the better team. If Jason Myers had hit the easier of the two field goal attempts in which he attempted in this game, then it would have been 34-17. Twice as many points as the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it felt like they were twice as good of a team at times in this particular contest.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers had below a 50% completion rate in the first half. The Steelers could not get their run game going except for a couple of 8 or 9 yard runs. It really was a repeat of last week for Pittsburgh, that they could not get balance on offense. The difference compared to last week, the Seahawks, even without Devin Witherspoon and Nick Emanwari, they shut down the play-action passing game for the most part. Aaron Rodgers was not able to get the ball downfield the way that he wanted to. They were pressuring him, and it didn't always result in sacks. But in the first half, he had 2 balls that he had to eat and throw into the turf on screens because Seattle destroyed both of them. And rather than take a sack, decided to just live to fight another down. Got a couple sacks out of the first half. They turned up the heat more in the second half, and they were able to get after it. And it's funny that you say if Jason Myers would have made an easier field goal. If Darion Kendrick would have picked off the easier interception, he would have doubled his previous entire career total. He had a phenomenal interception in the end zone that Calvin Austin, the speedy receiver, tipped up into the air, and Kendrick brought it in. I actually think that might have been a touchdown for Pat Freiermuth if Austin wouldn't have tried to make a play in the football. I don't think that's who Aaron Rodgers was trying to throw to, but that's why the congestion in the end zone can be a problem, and Kendrick made him pay with that pick. But he had one that bounced off his face mask in the first half. It was a Jamal Adams-esque interception attempt. Unfortunately, for Seahawks fans, they've seen this video a few times, but missed out on that. Luckily, it was third down, so they punted anyway. Just could have been an opportunity to get quick points off of a turnover in plus territory, but they didn't do it. Jason Myers missed a 36-yarder, but he makes one from mid-50s. That's the way that this game was. They made it harder than they needed to, but they made the plays when they needed to. Last week, we saw Riq Woolen botch those 2 plays at the end of regulation, and I think the play that underrated was the play of the game, and Mike McDonald seemed to kind of agree with that sentiment after the game, was on a 65-yard catch by Jalen Warren, middle of third quarter. Riq Woolen ran him down from the backside and tackled him at the 5-yard line. Then Kendrick's pick came 3 plays later. If that tackle's not made, they score a touchdown there. Pittsburgh's right back out in front. We're probably having a lot different discussion in terms of who won this game. That was a pivotal turnover there. Even though Seattle didn't get any points directly off it, they took 3 to 7 points off the board. That was a huge play. And then when they were up in the fourth quarter, they were up by 1 touchdown. And I love the fact that Clint Kubiak today, instead of playing not to lose, which I felt like that is what the Seahawks did last week on both sides of the ball. Instead of doing that, up 7, 3rd and 9, let Sam Darnold throw the ball. And what a phenomenal play by Darnold, because Patrick Queen came untouched on a blitz through the A-gap. He spins away to his left, lobs it to A.J. Barner. He gets the first down. Very next play, same formation they had on a deep ball to Torrey Horton in the third quarter that they missed on, but they felt like the safeties were driving hard on those plays. This particular look, it was cover 0, no safeties. Dial up the same play to JSN, 43-yard connection, and then Ken Walker scores a couple plays later. They went out and they took it to the Steelers instead of just trying to run the clock out. With a 7-point lead, they said, we're not putting this one in any doubt. And they go down and get that score. And the run that Ken Walker had was just ridiculous on a 19-yard run there to put the ball in the end zone. That's all about finishing. Then the defense, they're up 14. The game was pretty much decided at that point, but Byron Murphy II gets his second sack, and then you get an interception from Kobe Bryant. So you just slam the door shut on Pittsburgh, and you could hear a pin drop in this stadium. There were 2 times in this game when Holani recovered that touchdown. You could hear anything in the stadium. It was just silent. Same thing at the end when Kobe Bryant picked it off. Everybody just started storming out the exits. The Seahawks in all 3 phases made the plays they needed to make. They executed. And yes, there was some luck, but at the end of the day, George Holani made a phenomenal play on that ball in the end zone to keep his body in bounds and to be aware of what was going on there, which Pittsburgh clearly wasn't. So you make your own luck, and that's what the Seahawks did with their effort that they played with on all 3 phases of the ball. And I thought Sam Darnold, the 2 interceptions he had in the first half were rough, but he came right back, kept fighting, had 295 passing yards in this game, and he made the plays as the finisher at the quarterback position, both evading pass rushers and getting the ball downfield. Again, finish was the theme all week. Seemed like this team, even after the first half, putting themselves in a hole, they absolutely did that in every phase this game.
They really did. And I thought if you would have entered this game and said that Sam Darnold is going to outduel the future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers, that the Seahawks were going to dominate in terms of total yards, in terms of time of possession, all of those things, that they were going to be able to create a big play on special teams, albeit one that did require a significant amount of luck, but at the same time, be the more physical team in all 3 phases of the game. Then I think that there'd be a lot of Seahawks fans that just a couple of days ago, basically thought that this was, the end of the season. You might as well just wait and, look forward to the 2026 NFL draft. People were, it was like, crying over, one loss, when frankly the Seahawks outplayed the 49ers in every phase except the actual final score. This, I think, was the result that the Seahawks fans out there, the critics, the ones who were, skeptical about, can Sam Darnold be clutch in situations in which he is facing pressure on the road, all of those things. Again, I hope the Seahawks exercise some demons in this particular game. I love Sam Darnold's accuracy. The 2 interceptions were, complicated plays. I thought that the first one with Cooper Kupp, I thought that it was a somewhat predictable route by Kupp. Certainly, he was being covered by Jalen Ramsey, who knows him very well for time with the Los Angeles Rams. The likelihood that Cooper Kupp is going to break that back inside and go on a deep ball, I think it was, again, predictable that he was going to cut outside. Sam Darnold, there's no question about it. He was late on that throw. And so that I thought that was a throw that he should not have made. But the other play, I thought that Robbie Oots just missed the block. And Robbie Oots made some terrific blocks. But sometimes, rookies are going to get beaten as well. And to me, if he makes that block, then it's a much easier play for Sam Darnold to make. I certainly don't think that, he's going to be able to get the ball tipped to the line of scrimmage and then wind up having an interception. So as you mentioned, with Rick Woolen showing his hustle on the play to tackle Jaylen Warren, Darian Kendrick making the big interception in the corner of the end zone. It was about the finish. It was about the Seahawks' resiliency. And to me, this is a sign that this is the postseason squad, postseason caliber squad that you and I both thought entering the season.
When we come back, we've got more to dive into from this exciting win in Pittsburgh. We're going to dish out our game balls on offense, defense, and special teams. Don't go away. You're listening to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. The NFL season is officially underway, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, such as how many touchdowns Sam Darnold would throw against the Steelers, had 2 of them today. Building a same-game parlay with multiple prop bets from the opening week or week 2, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're just watching your own team or keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Welcome back to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. As we do each and every week on a post-game show, it's time to dish out game balls. And I actually found in 1 or 2 phases, one in particular was easy, but I found that there were a couple candidates that made sense for both offense and defense. But ultimately on offense, I think you and I are in agreement, especially with the way that the talk was last week. Ken Walker III, just 20 rushing yards on 10 attempts against the 49ers, had a forgettable first game. Zach Charbonnet kind of reversed that this week. Ken Walker going out and getting over 100 rushing yards. He had that game-clinching 19-yard touchdown run late in the fourth quarter that really sealed the deal, put the dagger in Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. And we got to see him running much more decisively. And I even asked him about that after the game, how much from last week to this week, how much more comfortable he felt with the system and his reads. And he made it clear that he felt a lot better today. And it was obvious. There were things that he was missing last week in terms of cutbacks, or he was just being laid on, that he was hitting today. And the difference, obviously, on the stat sheet was phenomenal, but just how it helped this team, particularly down the stretch. They rode K9 more than they did last week, and he was able to be one of those finishers on offense for the Seahawks.
Well, and again, you just used the word finish. That's the thing. We've all seen the flashes with Kenneth Walker III. I mean, that speed, his lateral agility. But there were multiple times, Corbin, when he was the proverbial hammer hitting the nail. I mean, his ability to bounce off of contact, keep his legs driving. It was very rare that he was taken down by the first defender in this particular football game. And so that, again, I think that was one of the biggest reasons why the Seahawks won. I mean, even with the play action passing that we saw later, the deep ball accuracy from Sam Darnold, certainly a terrific effort by the defense. But Kenneth Walker III really was the star of the football game, and he deserves to be mentioned here first.
Yeah, and I think you could have made an argument for Jackson Smith-Njigba here too, because he had another really good game. But to me, K9 was the tone setter in this game, and getting some of those explosive runs that were not there last week and just seeing him look like his rookie version, that was an exciting development for this offense. Now, defensive side of the football, I had 3 or 4 players that I contemplated for this because it was another really dominant defensive performance where a lot of points are put on the board in short field that they were inheriting. And this is without Devin Witherspoon or Nick Eamon-Worry. And there's a couple of guys that didn't have the stats that I necessarily was going to be talking about here. May talk about them in the last segment, but to me, Byron Murphy II deserves this game ball as much as anyone because first off, he had half a sack all of his rookie year. He had 2 sacks today. He more than doubled what he had last year. And we have seen a different player these first 2 weeks. He had a couple tackles for loss last week, was getting after Brock Purdy, had a couple pressures. This week, he was all over Aaron Rodgers. And one of those sacks came on the final drive of the game where he was serving as one of those finishers. A few plays later, Kobe Bryant gets the interception that all but seals the deal. Even though the game's outcome was pretty much done at that point, it really put the game away. You got to see him go after it. And Jaron Reed told him before the play, at least this is what Jaron Reed told us, that he told him before his second sack, hey, you're going to get a sack on this play. Goes out and gets Aaron Rodgers. We're seeing a more confident, more all-around productive defensive tackle in Byron Murphy II than we ever saw last year. And it's really exciting to see that jump in season 2.
Yeah, no question about it. And as you said, Corbin, there's just so many different players you could highlight for defense. Really quick, I'm going to quickly go back to offense just for a moment. You mentioned JSN, and I do think that this was, quite possibly JSN's best all-around football game. Obviously, he had other games in which he caught more passes for more yards, more touchdowns, but his run blocking in the second level was spectacular in this particular football game. I think it really helped Kenneth Walker III, have such a spectacular game. And then the fact that you just mentioned Jaron Reed, and I think that we also have to mention Leonard Williams. I think you can make an argument that any one of those 3, Jaron Reed, Leonard Williams, or Byron Murphy deserves this honor just because all 3 of them were terrific in this football game. This is a Pittsburgh Steelers team that prides itself on physicality, prides itself on being able to, give their quarterback a good pocket and then be able to move people, in the running game. And they were unable to do that consistently, both in pass protection and in the running game. And it wasn't necessarily the edge rushers. We talked about, we kind of were expecting like a splashy performance from a Boye Mafe or from a Derek Hall, who did have some big hits, but not sacks. For Byron Murphy to have this type of performance, Corbin, I thought it was easily his best game in a Seahawk uniform and just bodes well for the future of this young man. And obviously with the first round selection, there's all kinds of hype, all kinds of expectations. But if this is the type of player that he is going to be, then the Seahawks, again, are going to be certainly in that top 5 defense conversation and one of the most fearsome fronts in all of the league.
Under normal circumstances, I actually would have considered Torrey Horton for our special teams game ball because he had a 20-plus yard punt return. And look, sometimes we consider offensive and defensive contributions. He scored his first career touchdown today. And what a throw Darnold made there. He got blasted on that, but he just stood in tough, made the throw, got it to his receiver, and Seattle was up 7-0. It was really nice to see that. So I could have considered Torrey Horton there. But look, as Sam Darnold called it, maybe the weirdest play he's ever seen in his football life. George Halani's got to be the special teams player. And, oh, by the way, he had a couple nice kick returns mixed in there as well. He is finding ways to make a significant impact, even though he's not playing any snaps on offense right now. And he'll be ready if that time comes. I fully believe that. I'm fully confident George Halani will be ready to play offensive snaps if the Seahawks need him to. But the opportunistic play that he made down there. And again, that is not an easy play to keep that ball in bounds with your body getting down by rules. Your momentum carrying you out the back of the end zone. That is a fantastic play. And add in the fact that he has had several returns. They've gone past the 35-yard line. So you're getting more yardage than you would get in a touchback. he is doing all these little things on special teams. You know, he can make tackles on kick coverage as well. But obviously that was a tremendous momentum changer in this game, and you can call it lucky, but again, he put the effort in and he made that spectacular play, keeping his body in bounds. George Holani is easily the special teams player of the game. There's no ifs, ands, buts about that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I thought that the punter, Michael Dixon, had a solid game, not his best game. Obviously, we talked about with Jason Myers missing the one field goal. The fact that he hit the longer one, is helpful. But again, not his best game. George Holani was terrific in terms of securing the football to get that easy touchdown. The kick return, just his burst, his courage to attack the hole as quickly as he did. There's not a lot of messing around back there. I mean, that'll be one of my criticisms actually of Torrey Horton. While he is electric to watch, at the same time, he's also going laterally half the time, whereas George Holani is going very much vertically, and it did put Seattle in a much more advantageous position to start their drive. So yes, I 100% agree with you as far as George Holani being the special teams player of the game, getting the game ball. I would also mention Mike Morris. I thought that he made a couple of nice plays. He blew up a couple of blocks, made a nice tackle where, he showed a little bit more athletic ability than you could reasonably expect for a guy 6'6", 285 pounds.
Yeah, and he had a couple nice plays on defense too. That probably was the best regular season game that I've seen from Big 94. And that is a huge development, literally and figuratively, for the Seattle Seahawks if they're going to get some stellar play from him on defense and special teams. Up next, we've got more standouts to talk about from this game and a few duds, as every week. There's always a few guys that don't have great games. We're going to have our weekly stock watch. Who's hot, who's not. 3 up, 3 down. That's coming up next here in our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. Welcome back to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks, live from Pittsburgh. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks in the win column for the first time in 2025, a 31-17 victory over the Steelers in Pittsburgh, a stadium the Seahawks have not had much luck go their way. Today, certainly they had good fortune bestowed upon them, and they took advantage of it. Let's get to our weekly stock watch and talking about 3 up, 3 down. Usually out of a win, it's a lot tougher to find guys on the downside, but certainly it's tough to whittle it down to just 3 on the plus side. And Rob, I want to start on the defensive side of the football with 2 players in the secondary that had vastly different situations here. Darian Kendrick has been with the team for 3 weeks and trying to learn Mike McDonald's defense in that amount of time. Oh, by the way, he's playing a position he had 9 career snaps at his entire career in the slot. We didn't even know if he was going to be the starting slot until the pregame warmups when he was out there with the first team defense. For him to go out there and look that natural, I admit I had some doubts because his athletic testing, it looked to me like he was going to have a hard time in that position, but he was consistently playing sticky coverage. He had 2 interceptions. He dropped one of them, unfortunately, but 2 interception opportunities. He caught the one that really mattered in the end zone, though, to send the Steelers to the sideline with no points after the biggest play they had all day, that 65-yard catch and run by Jaylen Warren. I thought Kendrick also played really well in the run game. He came up and stuck people a couple of times. We got to see him, a guy that was making really his debut on defense for the Seahawks, to go out there and show that experience he had playing for the Rams the last few years and being an impact player in the secondary in the slot spot. They were able to not miss a beat, even with the injuries they had. And then you've got, on the other hand, Josh Jobe, who was coming off the best game of his career. And you and I kind of differed with you a little bit on this, but we both kind of had a little bit of skepticism. Is he going to be able to hold up against DK Metcalf? Oh, by the way, he did really well against DK Metcalf. Had a pass breakup against him in the fourth quarter. Aaron Rodgers last year, after picking on him in the Jets-Seahawks game, every time he went after him, it seemed like bad things happened for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Either guys got blown up, he upended a running back in this game, he had a pass breakup. It just seems like number 29. To me, this is not hyperbole. I think Josh Jobe has been the best player in the Seahawks secondary these first 2 weeks. I think he is playing like a Pro Bowler right now. And you look at the statistics, I guarantee when they come out tomorrow, when I have a chance to do the charting, I don't know that he gave up a catch today, and he gave up one last week. Josh Jobe is playing out of his mind right now.
He is playing terrific football. I'm not surprised. Again, I'm a big Josh Jobe fan, have been a big Josh Jobe fan. My only concern with Josh Jobe is, does he have the elite speed to track with the fastest of the vertical threats in the NFL? DK Metcalf can be that. But Corbin, when you know this, when you have such a terrific pass rush, then the receiver isn't going to have enough time to take those deep routes, and so he was protected in that regard. The Seahawks do have two quality safeties back there that are also helping. But Chuck, I don't mean to say that to take anything away from how well the Josh Jobe is playing. I mean, he is just ultra physical, ultra assignment sound. He is just a reliable, consistent football player against the run, against the pass. He gets his hands in there, and he rarely makes any kind of mistake where he gets himself out of position and then has to tug on the jersey the way, unfortunately, like Tariq Woolen got called for pass interference in this game, or excuse me, like it was a holding penalty got called for in this game. But still, I just think that Josh Jobe is playing terrific football. I did have the advantage over you and over a lot of other folks to be able to go to the Los Angeles Rams training camp this year. So I did see Darion Kendrick playing inside in the slot position, or the nickel position, whatever you want to call it, and had seen that his ability did translate very nicely, in my opinion, inside. I was stunned when the Rams released him and allowed Seattle opportunity to steal a player of his caliber. I think that his mentality, to me, is similar to what you have with Josh Jobe, and that he is a very aggressive, very instinctive player. And obviously, we saw that a player who has a knack for making a big play, because, again, that interception, snuffing out that scoring opportunity for the Pittsburgh Steelers after they had just created such excitement with the long run from Jaylen Warren, I thought was one of the absolute biggest plays of this football game.
As for the offense, Cooper Kupp was my second contender to get the game ball on offense. It wasn't Jackson Smith-Njigba, because we saw how much he struggled last week. It just seemed like he wasn't able to create separation. He had that uncharacteristic missed opportunity, a drop on third down that he was lamenting after the game at the podium, like, I always make that play. He goes out today and has obviously the best game of his Seahawks career, but he looked like the 28, 29-year-old version of Cooper Kupp. He was making really good catches, and then he was turning upfield and kind of sneakily picking up yards after the catch, and he looked spry out there. And the touchdown drive that ended with A.J. Barner catching a 7-yard touchdown, that touchdown doesn't happen without Kupp coming up huge on third down. It had third and long, and he caught a 16-yard catch. Next play goes for 17 yards. Sam Darnold was looking for him in key situations. We didn't see that last week. And if you can have Cooper Kupp producing like that every week, teams suddenly aren't going to be able to do bracketings consistently on Jackson Smith-Njigba, especially if you got Torrey Horton providing the speed and the ability to win downfield. It's a 180 from what we saw last week with him playing the way he did today. It totally transforms this passing game.
Yeah, and just so money on the critical downs. I mean, you can just see that Sam Darnold has already has established a great rapport with Cooper Kupp. The ball was thrown before Kupp had turned at times, and so again, that's very encouraging. Caught the ball cleanly, as you mentioned. Just the way that he would catch the ball, duck his head, and just with very subtle movements, be able to scrap out another 2, 3, 4, 5 yards after the catch. And then again, I acknowledge JSN's blocking downfield. Cooper Kupp is also very effective in that regard as well. So the Seahawks running game, I thought, definitely was sparked by just Kenneth Walker III's instincts and speed, but I also think, and obviously the blocking up front of the big guys. But I think that the downfield blocking by Seattle's wide receivers, especially Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think played a significant role in why Seattle was so effective in running football.
As for the downside here, and again, even in losses, there's players that struggle. And in fairness, this is going to be a lot like the discussion we had with Ken Walker III last week. I did have some issues, and I posted this on my social media accounts today as I was covering the game live, it felt like it was obvious early the perimeter running game generally was not there. The exception to that, of course, was Ken Walker's touchdown at the end of the game, but that was 3rd and long, and I think that Pittsburgh was not expecting that at all. And before that, it seemed like Seattle, they were trying to get Charbonnet going with the outside runs, and there was a point where he was averaging 0.4 yards per carry. Like, they were just blowing up every run play that 26 was in. But I thought the play selection helped with making that struggle because they just weren't able to win outside very much today. And Charbonnet got more of those opportunities than Walker did. Nonetheless, it was not a good second game for Charbonnet after being the more impressive runner last week. And I have a feeling that's how it's going to be week to week with these two, because they both have talent. They're different style running backs, and against different types of teams, you're going to see different backs sometimes have success. In other games, they might not. This just was not Charbonnet's day.
No, it almost felt like the exact opposite of what we saw a week ago against the 49ers, where it felt like every time that Kenneth Walker III got the ball, then he had 2 or 3 defenders in his face. He just didn't have any opportunities. It was like it was Zach Charbonnet's turn to try to demonstrate, what he could do with very little blocking in front of him. I thought that he played a reasonably decent game. It's just that he had just very few opportunities to make anything happen. And then there were some opportunities in pass protection as well. Pittsburgh is exotic with their blitzes and puts their running back in a very difficult position often. But Zach Charbonnet is, in my opinion, Seattle's best pass protecting back. And I thought that he struggled in that regard in this game as well.
2 other guys that I had on my down list, and again, in a win, it's maybe not as big of a deal, but I just thought Boye Mafe, and maybe this is just for the first couple of weeks, we've seen a couple splash plays, but there's been a lot of both these games. There have been large portions of these games, extended spans, where he's just kind of been nowhere to be found. And with the tackle situation for the Steelers, I thought for sure the edges were going to be more disruptive in general, but it just felt like, aside from one pressure that Rodgers ended up throwing the ball out of bounds, I believe that was early in the game, 53, I can't remember another play that was noteworthy. So this is more about the plays that weren't made than mistakes being made, but expectations are higher for Boye Mafe in the last year of his contract. And so far, we haven't seen him really rise up in these 2 games. And I thought this was an ideal matchup for him, particularly when he was matched up against Broderick Jones. Really, he did a great job of taking him out of the game. And Jason Myers, good for you getting the 56-yarder late in the game. But the 36-yarder, it was so ugly that for a brief moment in the score, in the press box, the scorekeeper said that it was tipped by Jalen Ramsey. Then they had to go back and realize, oh, wait, no, it wasn't tipped. It was just a really bad kick from 36 yards that doinked off the left upright. You expect your kicker to make 36-yarders. So in a game where not a lot of guys had rough outings, that still stands for something for me.
Yeah, I agree with you on Jason Myers. You expect a kicker that is, I believe he's the highest paid kicker in the league at this point, that you expect him to make kicks like that. And then with Boye Mafe, I thought that Boye Mafe and maybe Uchenna Nwosu as well, both of them, it felt like, and maybe this is just the design of the defense. I have to go back and watch the All-22. I'm eager to do that. But just watching the television game, the television copy live, it felt like at times Seattle's edge rushers were doing some twists and stunts, looping inside, and then getting pinned inside. And I want to see a little bit more, not effort. I'm not questioning their effort, but I'd like to see a little bit more of a, speed back outside in pursuit. Aaron Rodgers, once he was able to evade that and kind of scoop his way out of that, then he basically had a lot of field to operate. And so I'd like to see a little bit more finish from Seattle's edge rushers. But fortunately for the rest of the squad, they certainly supplied the finish that the Seahawks needed to escape Pittsburgh with the victory.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, I'll be riding solo due to our different schedules. That's one of the reasons Rob was on for tonight's postgame, and it's quite fun to have both of us on here for the postgame show. I'll be dishing out my Monday musings after my first opportunity to watch the All-22. I'll dive into that tomorrow. a deeper recap into Seattle's first win of the 2025 season. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and go Hawks.